Welcome to Lee Domingue's podcast, where he shares stories and teaches principles behind why and how your legacy starts today.
Well, Jon, thank you so much, my brother. What an incredible morning we had at the leadership session that you did here with us. We're right here in beautiful Beaver Creek, Colorado at the Kingdom Builder Summit. It's our 19th year, and it's your second time being with us, and you just helped us all be better. And just so grateful you take a moment to join the Legacy Starts Today podcast. Just love you and Catherine a whole bunch and have tons of respect for you and what you're doing. Not only ministering to, you work with pro teams and college teams and all kind of different in the sports area, but also just in the business community. And my heart for business people, being one for 35 years, it's just really special how you're able to not only teach, but stretch us in a great way. And you just brought great revelation today and helped us all. So thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Welcome.
Yeah, it's great to be back for a second time and just blown away by Kingdom Builders and what it's all about, the kind of people that come here, the mission to really impact the kingdom, and your heart. You and Laura just have been incredible in what you've done. Your faithfulness has been just off the charts. And now it's obviously being rewarded tenfold in terms of more and more people coming, more and more impact. Isn't it funny we say the reward? It's not money.
Yeah.
It's the treasures in heaven and what you're doing and the seeds you're planting and the kingdom that you're building and growing. And so when I come here, it's almost like, it's not almost, it is my favorite place to be. Like there's just a spirit here and everyone's just willing to learn and grow, and we're here together as a community. Yeah, just so powerful.
Everyone, thank you, and that's so kind, but everyone is longing for fulfillment. And just being philanthropic is not going to bring forever fulfillment. It may bring fulfillment for a moment. And I tell people, being a kingdom builder is simply being faithful to what God's given you. And, He doesn't hold us accountable for what we don't have, but he does hold us for what we do have. And, it's just been something that really kind of started out of our heart many years ago as a business person who was unfulfilled. And you're right. It's not about that next win of a payday. It's like, is my life really matter? Am I really making a difference? And we serve a God who's an others God. He's always about others. Like we give our life to Christ and then we give our life away. Right? Isn't that the case? And so for me to be steward in this, it's just, after you guys had finished your session, I'm just sitting here amazed at what God's doing. And pastors need business people. Business people need pastors. You've got a great relationship with your pastor.
I was just thinking about that in terms of we're here to give our lives away. And you can't be a great leader if you're a narcissist.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's
great
good.
leaders see greatness in others. And so Erwin McManus led me to Jesus.
Wow.
Gave my life to Jesus all the way back in 2007, 36 years old.
Wow.
And we were friends at that point, but he was someone I listened to, and his sermons really spoke to me. And from there, I sort of pursued him. And he laughs to this day. He'll say, I pursued him so much, he finally said, I have to be his friend. He's always there. He's always supporting me. He's always helping me out. And I felt like a kingdom builder at that time. I didn't know much about the kingdom early on as a Christian, but it was interesting because Jack Graham brought me to speak to his marketplace ministry event all the way back in like 2008 or 9, right after the Energy Bus came out, brought me there. I'm like, how does this guy recognize me or even that I have something to say? So early on, God was making me a kingdom builder, was raising me up to do that and do that role. Zig Ziglar was in the audience.
Oh my.
That's how cool it was to speak.
That was a legend there.
And Zig is there taking notes while I'm speaking. Not because I was up there. Zig was a lifelong learner, 82 years old, still learning, still growing, still improving. But understanding that relationship between kingdom builders and priests and kings. And I remember being on a plane having a conversation with the guy next to me, and he taught me about kings and priests.
Wow.
Even back then. So again, God was basically raising me up, developing me, helped me become that person that could invest in the kingdom. So when it came time to really start to support Erwin and his ministry, I did. So I was there supporting him, supporting his ministry. I'm on the board of Mosaic. So the guy who leads me to Christ, I'm now on the board of that church.
It's fantastic.
And I look back on that, and the relationship has been incredible. What's funny though now is that Erwin's moving in many ways towards speaking a lot to businesses as well.
Yeah.
So we both speak to businesses, and I'm moving towards speaking to a lot of churches, it seems, and church events. So we crack up. I'm like,
so good.
He's still a pastor. I'm like, Erwin, our relationship together has molded you in one way, shaped me in many ways, and his teachings have shaped me. And I've seen the fruit of that relationship, of supporting that ministry. And my son would listen to Erwin a lot, and really, I would say Erwin's messages really spoke to him, that helped him become a follower of Jesus. So you could see how like you invest and you bless ministry, you bless churches, and you'll always be blessed in the place of when you're blessing. I think about Tim Tebow, for instance, and his wife Demi. Like now, they have this incredible marriage. They met because he created Night to Shine.
Wow, I didn't know that's how they met.
He created Night to Shine, and she had a special needs sibling.
Oh my!
As a result of that, him doing that and blessing that and investing in that and pouring his heart and soul into that, he then meets the love of his life and his wife as a result of that. So you're always blessed in the place of your blessing. It's not why you do it, but when kings and priests get together and we build the kingdom together, we get blessed in the process. Is it hard? Yes. Is it difficult? Do you face tribulations? Of course. But through the fire or being in the cave moments, as Charlotte talked about today,
good.
Those, such a great talk. In those moments, we grow, we become more humble, and we recognize it's not about us. It really is about others. I was miserable as a non-believer when I was focused on me. When I became a believer, I was filled with this insight, with this wisdom, with this spirit that God said, it's about others. And he changed me. He transformed me. Who I am today is completely different than who I was 17 years ago.
You work with both at the highest level in college and also professional sports. Work with a lot of sports teams, a lot of businesses, schools, heavily involved in just really investing and giving your life away in a lot of areas. A lot of very high-profile people, a lot of very influential people. What do you find in those worlds as like a missing ingredient? What do you find that's a missing ingredient?
Well, it's recognizing that those are areas of ministry. It's wild when I look back, like God brought me to speak to all these educators. So I work with tons of schools, all these businesses and companies. We're talking Southwest Airlines and New York Life and Dell and In-N-Out Burger, which everyone loves. One of my clients.
Yeah, we're praying that one comes to Alabama sometime.
I love that company. I love their heart. Love how they show up. Spoke to all of their leaders. They actually brought the Power of Positive Leadership, my book, their entire company. And then obviously work with all the sports teams. What's missing in many cases is, I would say, discipleship in a sense of leaders developing and growing leaders. You've got to build leaders if you're a leader. There's macro leadership and there's micro leadership. There's strategy, there's vision, there's the overall plan. But then there's coaching, which is micro leadership. Coaching and leading your direct reports. Taking your 12, leading them in an effective way, developing them to be better leaders so that they can go cascade the leadership throughout the organization. So often we lose leadership, I would say probably in the church and the business world, at that middle level of leadership, because we have taskmasters, but not leaders. And so they have to be taught leadership.
That's really good. Yeah, that's really good. I have a saying, if you give away what you've learned and what you've lived, God puts an X factor of increase on it, because everyone needs an upstream in life. Everyone needs a downstream. You get wisdom from an upstream, but to get fulfillment, you have to give that wisdom away to a downstream. And when someone gives their life away, there's just, God brings us fulfillment inside. And that's been something even with Kingdom Builders, is trying to help business people and pastors come together. That I think, Coach Bill McCartney, who was a Hall of Fame college football coach, and
know his son too.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, and he's got Mike's
the agent.
Yeah, agent. Right. Exactly. Well, in Coach's way, he would say, Lee, he goes, really, Kingdom Builders, God's called pastors and business people not to compete against one another. He's called them to complete each other. And isn't it amazing, though? That, to me, is a great definition of none of us are as good as all of us.
That's so good. We're not competing, we're completing.
Yes.
I also believe the body of Christ, which has many churches, you're not competing against each other, you're competing for each other.
Yeah, so good. Yeah.
I say this to athletes all the time, as you're trying to make the starting position, you're trying to get the starting role, and you have someone vying for your position, you're competing against each other, but if you compete for each other, you make each other better.
Yeah.
So if you go out there every day and try to make the person next to you better by challenging them and pushing them, they're going to improve and you're going to improve. And so I have countless stories. That's how Pat Riley got his start as a basketball player for the pro level. He was brought in to be this guy who would just challenge the starters and like just give them a hard time. And he did. And he was relentless. And eventually he becomes a starter. If he's not willing to take on that role of making his teammates better, there's not the Pat Riley Hall of Famer, now part owner of the Miami Heat.
Yeah. Wow. What a legend. I mean, he's not only was he a great player, but also one of the greatest coaches ever.
Greatest coaches, greatest leaders. And I think that's probably the most intimidating I've ever been, is speaking to the Miami Heat in their locker room. And there's Pat Riley sitting there listening to my talk.
Wow.
I think that was probably the most nervous I've ever been.
Yeah, that's a little sobering. Well, I know that you released a book called The One Truth. And we gave that to all of our Kingdom Builders this week, but you shared on that in your session this morning, and you talked about the 5 Ds. And why don't you unpack a little bit about the One Truth? Because I thought it was brilliant how not only did you unpacked it, but you took us on a journey, and then you brought us back to the foundation of the One Truth. Why don't you unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah, it's cool that you said that and you noticed that, because that's what actually led me to actually write this book. I was teaching it initially and teaching it at a level of just understanding high state of mind and low state of mind, understanding how thoughts work and understanding the 5 Ds, and then giving the answer to the 5 Ds, and then realizing, it all comes down to oneness and separateness. And once you understand that, then you can actually see how it plays out biblically as well. And the truth is the truth. You're going to find the truth everywhere. So it's been fun for me to actually now talk about it and unpack it, because I originally began speaking about it, but by accident in a sense, because I didn't know what I was saying or how I was saying. I was just beginning teaching it. And as I taught it, I started to realize what resonated. And when I would go into teams, I would basically just share high state of mind, low state of mind. And once they understood that in the 5 Ds and how to overcome the 5 Ds, I was done. But then one time with one team, I said, now let me explain the power behind this and how all this works and why it works. And then they were like, whoa. And once they understood that, I was like, okay, I got this. So I am so excited about this message. The 5 Ds you have to understand from the very beginning. These are the Ds that will sabotage your mindset, sabotage your mental health, keep you from your destiny, and they will wreak havoc on you. And they're doubt. Seeds of doubt grows into forests of uncertainty. There's distortion. Negative thoughts are lies that will tell us things about ourselves and our future that just aren't true. There's distortion. There's discouragement. As I said today, we don't give up because it's hard. We give up because we get discouraged. And there's distractions, and distractions are the enemy of greatness. And there's division. And the root for the Greek word of anxious means to separate and divide. And to me, that's the kicker right there. Once you realize that, I feel anxious, it's because you feel divided and separate. And what do negative thoughts do? Separate and divide you. What is the enemy trying to do? Divide you and separate you from Big God, from others. He doesn't want kingdom builders.
Yeah, no, he doesn't.
He doesn't want kings and priests to get together and make a difference in this world. He doesn't want a church to have an impact. He doesn't want a marriage to be fruitful and joyful. He wants to ruin your marriage. He wants to destroy your very essence, your being. He wants to destroy our teams and our organizations. And going back to sports teams or corporate teams, you can explain to them without even talking about the enemy that there is this force that's always trying to divide you and separate you as a team. And you can bring up jealousy or bitterness or the gossip that happens, or, hey, doesn't the worst thing happen at the worst possible time?
Yeah. So
and the team starts fighting. So you can actually give examples. And when I shared the 5 Ds in a non-biblical way to several coaches, they're like, that's it. I need this for my home life too. I need this for my marriage. Because you realize how the 5 Ds play out in everything.
Yeah, so good. You know, one of the Ds you talked about was distraction. And I remember 2 coaches. One was Coach McCartney, won the national championship in Colorado back in the day. I think it was Cordell Stewart was his quarterback.
Remember him well?
And it ended up, then you had, there was a coach at LSU that coached, won the national championship. And and I asked him this question, separate. I said, what is the single most important thing that you have to do as a coach to be great. They won at the highest level. And they both said this. They say, eliminate distraction. That is my job as the head coach, to eliminate distraction. And so when they said that, I was like, to me, that was amazing, because we get so distracted. Social media creates not only comparison and just all these other things, but there's so many things that are causing such chaos. But God is a God of order. And people want to grow, but order precedes growth. You can't grow if you don't have order.
And if you have chaos.
Yes. Oh, and if you have chaos, it's just going to reek. There's just going to be this tension, and chaos is just all around us. So I heard this once said, choices lead, feelings follow. And most of us we're like feeling it, right? We feel our way through, do things. And even in relationships, now I have to choose, been married 35 years this year, and I have to choose each and every day, I'm going to love my wife. Sometimes I don't feel like that. Honestly, sometimes I don't feel like I'm going to, maybe my kids or what, I love them. But sometimes, man, I'm feeling a little bit different.
Sometimes I don't like them.
Yeah, exactly. But so I have to make a choice. And those choices then are going to dictate my feelings. But choices lead, feelings follow. I thought that was
I think that's really brilliant.
Yeah.
And as a coach, as a leader, it's so important to understand how these D's work and understand how negativity will divide a team. So you got to be on the lookout, watching your team, working with your organization. Where are the voids in communication? Because where there's a void in communication, negativity will fill it.
Yeah.
Who's not connecting with who? Where is the bitterness? Where is the envy? Where is the jealousy? Where are we having gaps in just our overall unity and connection?
Yeah.
And as you're doing that as a leader, you're observing and you're spending time building the team, investing in the team, getting rid of the distractions.
Yep.
Focusing on what matters most. And I always say, what matters most? The relationships, the unity, the connection, the commitment, the caring. I have 4 C's: communication, connection, commitment, and caring. You get rid of those 5 D's. You invest in those 4 C's. You're going to build a great team.
Yeah.
You're going to build great relationships, and you're going to perform at a higher level together, because you'll never have commitment without connection.
Yeah.
So when you're a connected team, you become a committed team. So my job as a leader, your job as a leader, leaders listening to this, work on getting your team more connected, and then be aware of how the D's are working to divide your team and separate your team, and how negativity actually is coming into your team. Energy vampires. We have the no complaining rule.
Yeah.
And so working with companies, implement the no complaining rule. What does that say? You're not allowed to complain unless you come with a solution.
That's exactly right.
So now the complaints are no longer sabotaging your team, but you're finding solutions that make you better. It sounds so simple, but it actually works in a big way.
Yeah.
And so the same thing with difficult conversations. I have a new book coming out with a colleague, Amy Kelly. It's called Difficult Conversations Don't Have to Be Difficult. This is incredible. Leaders are loving this. I shared it with the Colorado Rockies for the entire organization. So I spoke to all the coaches, the front office, the staff. It was ticket sales. They bring the entire organization together, which is really cool for culture. But I shared the difficult conversations. I said, let's have a difficult one right now.
Yeah.
I said, here's a difficult one. You guys are not winning right now. You haven't won the last few years. You've got ticket holders who are not happy. They're probably calling up and they're all upset. You have employees that morale might be low. What do we do when that happens? We've got to talk about it and say, all right, we've got a lot of young people. We've got a lot of young players. Every year there's a team with young players that actually does really well. That could be us. You can thank your fans. Hey, we know you've stayed with us during the down years, and you appreciate us and we appreciate you. Just know that when we do win, we know it's going to be because of you. Because you stuck with us. And you have these conversations, but you address the elephant in the room. And
that's so important.
Most teams and organizations, we have now thousands of leaders around the country have put an elephant on their desks from our trainings. They go through our leadership trainings.
And you're not rolling tide.
No, it's the elephant that says you got to deal with the elephant in the room. Because when Nick Nurse won the championship with the Toronto Raptors, he put an elephant on his desk, he told me. because he knew there were issues they needed to deal with, and they were going to address the issues, and they were going to have the difficult conversations. If they don't have those conversations, they don't win a championship. I can't say what they talked about, but I know what they did, and I know, wow, that conversation led to connection, greater commitment, and led to a championship team. And the leaders so often don't have the difficult conversations. And so we have a model on how to do that. And just it's a star 3 model, but one of the R's is rules of engagement. So we say every team, every organization has to create a rule of engagement or rules on how you'll deal with difficult conversations, how you'll have those conversations. One of ours for my company, no meeting after the meeting. How often do we have the meeting? And then later on, we're having another meeting where everyone's talking about the meeting. And they're like, that was a stupid idea, and that was dumb, and that was dumb. You're going to have to say it at the meeting. You have to tell the truth.
Man, that's gold meeting. Right there. That's gold. In running different businesses over the years and stuff, I've made mistakes where when I made mistakes and I didn't deal with an issue when I first saw it, 100% of the time, it cost me 10 times greater because I waited. And sometimes because I liked the person, but I allowed a level of kind of mediocrity to come in, and it affected everyone in our organization. And then when I dealt with it, it was very painful, right? Because you love people. You get to know that it's that extrovert staff person that you just love, that's like a lot of fun to be around, and they're full of life, but they're not getting it done. And so I allowed some things to go on for a bit, and I'll never forget that. I ended up having to, terminate the person. And when I did, they took all of our intellectual property and tried to duplicate our business.
Wow.
And I had to stop it, which made it not only more expensive, but it was just the pain of going through all of that. And so I think having those tough conversations, is dealing with it when you first see it. And
you experience the pain of not dealing with it early on. The fact that you had the gut instinct to do so, and the fact that they would try to steal your intellectual property shows they actually weren't on the bus anyway.
100%.
And they weren't loyal. So your first instinct was correct. And I've let people in my companies in the past stay on too long. And it always bites you in the butt.
It does bite you in the butt.
So the biggest mistake leaders make is they do not address the negativity that exists when they see it. It persists, and eventually it will sabotage your team if you do not deal with it. And we don't want to deal with it because we're busy. We don't want to deal with it because we don't want the conflict in that moment. We have a million things going on. We focus on what is urgent instead of what matters. And that's the key. So I think it's a great lesson for leaders. Just deal with it. And also in the church world, churches have to understand that just because someone wants the job or someone is able to do the job doesn't mean they're the right person and the best person for the job. With our leadership model, we talk about love and accountability, which is how Jesus led. Love and accountability. I love what Andy Stanley said. Have a ministry, don't hire a ministry.
That's great.
You have your ministry, but letting that person go, you're not entitled to give that person a job. You're not obligated to give that person a job. Sometimes you have to let that person go because they're not the right fit for the job. Now, should you find them another position? Hopefully, yes. But if they're not the right fit, or they don't want it, or they don't work well, love and accountability says, I'm not going to let you settle for anything but your best. And I can't have you be on the team if you're not bringing your best to the team. And the other thing is, if I truly care about you and love you, I've got to actually call you up to greatness. I've got to challenge you. If I don't push you, you'll just be average the whole time. And there's a lot of average mediocrity in churches and businesses because we don't practice love and accountability. I learned this from Dabo Sweeney, working with Clemson, and Alan Mullally on the business side, who turned around Ford. He led with love and accountability. He told me, John, you got to love them up, but you got to hold them accountable to the culture, the values, the principles, and the standards. And when you create standards in your church or your business or your organization, and you create standards, leadership becomes really easy. These are the standards. Everyone knows the standards, and then you can basically point out whether they're meeting the standards or not living up to the standards. Watch the tape. The tape don't lie. Hey, this is what you looked like yesterday at work. These are your numbers. These are our standards, or this is our performance standard, and this is where you are not meeting the standard.
That film, when they're watching that film, I didn't do that, coach. The film's showing, the film's not lying.
That's right.
Film, or the numbers don't lie.
Don't lie, but people will make all sorts of excuses, and they'll try to put it on you because they don't want to take a responsibility. But once you create the standard, it's not personal. I'm leading to the standard.
Where have you, I love asking this question. I think it's one of the most powerful questions that a lot of times when we go through a tough time, or we have failure in our lives. You know, I lost my first business in my 20s, and it was very painful, but I had a choice to make. I could allow that either to define me or refine me,
Yep.
and I chose the latter. And there is a return you get on failure.
Big return.
Yeah, it's a big return.
If you're willing to
Yes.
learn and grow. People always say, failure is a great teacher. Failure helps
Yeah.
you grow. Not necessarily.
Yeah.
If you don't use it, it doesn't lead to growth.
No.
So you got to use it for growth. You got to
was
use
it?
it to make you better.
What's it? The value of failure is learning, and the value of learning is improvement.
That's good.
But you know,
John Maxwell say that?
He did. He did.
I figured John Maxwell
That was John
would
Maxwell.
say that.
So I was with him.
I love John.
And just an amazing man. And we were traveling together, and he brought up this. He goes, "There's a return on failure," and I'm like, "Wow, I never saw it like that." And then he said, "The value of failure is learning. The value of learning is improvement," and because failure will do things that success won't. Failure will keep you humble. Failure will make you. There's a tenacity that can be built as you go through that. And where I had a business failure that then turned into ideas that were created for another business, it was very, very successful, and is still successful today. And I look at that, and so many times we're struggling and we go through and have a setback, and it paralyzes us.
Yep.
And we honestly, in our own minds, self-disqualify. We're like, oh, I'm just not, I'm not ever, and you talked about this today. You talked about healing.
Yep.
And you unpacked something that I had never heard before. And when you were talking about healing, and I took some notes, and you talked about, the power of prayer and love unites, and, we're created for connection. But you said this, you said, you've got to stop hiding and start healing. Why don't you unpack that for us a little bit?
Yeah, it was a story about R.J. Dickey, who was a baseball player who was not a great pitcher, but towards the end of his career, he became one. And he was asked what made him so successful towards the end. And he said he started to reveal and share his sexual abuse that he had dealt with and the trauma that he had experienced. And as a result of that and sharing, he stopped hiding as a person. So he stopped hiding on the mound as a pitcher. And so when you stop hiding, you could start healing.
Yeah.
And so often, the wound that we experience causes us to feel guilt and shame, so we hide, and so we can never heal. But when we uncover it, God will cover it with His grace.
Oh, yes, He does.
When we try to cover it, God will eventually uncover it.
Yeah.
But it's going to be much more painful, like pulling off the Band-Aid very fast. I mean, it's going to be painful. God loves us too much to not heal the wounds that we carry. He could allow us to go through life having the wound and not healing it. But it always comes up because He loves us, and it's painful and it's uncomfortable, and there's a return on our pain.
Yeah,
There's a return on the trauma we've experienced. There's a return on the challenges and the tribulations we've gone through. And the wounds that we experience literally become the healing that leads to growth and ultimately the purpose and the plan that's meant for us in our life. The reason why when people fail, they give up or they get crushed by it, it's because their identity is tied to their performance.
Wow. Yeah.
Their identity is not tied into God or into who they are as a human being, as a child of God. Their identity is tied based on their performance, their results, their outcome. So throughout their whole life, they are living out of their wounds because they're filling their wound that they have. What is a wound but a separation?
Yep.
They're filling the wound with performance and with success and money and fame, or whatever it may be. So you're filling it with that, and that's giving you temporary relief.
Yeah.
But it's not giving you restoration.
It'd never be enough.
No, and then comes a point where you now fail. And now because you failed, now you're filling it with a bunch of junk and crap. And as a result of that, now you feel like a failure. And that caused you to give up. It caused you to stop. And this is why a lot of young people don't go after things because they don't want to fail in the process. A lot of young people love batting practice, say baseball players. I heard this a lot recently. A lot of baseball players, they'll love batting practice, but they don't love the games. Because in the competition, they're tying their performance and their identity and they're weaving it together.
Wow.
So if I'm doing batting practice, I'm just enjoying hitting. But now I'm competing.
Yeah.
It's a definition of whether I'm worthy or not. And you need to know that you are a child of God, that you are worthy, whether you succeed or fail. And there's so much freedom in knowing that. And for me, I never got my self-worth, in essence, early on, I would say. Early on, I did. Early on, I hated to fail because of it. But later on, the failures were okay for me because I'm like, oh, this doesn't define me. I just had a restaurant go under. Yep. Oh, that's okay. Yep. I had another restaurant go under. I've had 2 go under. Yep. Oh, I lost my race for city council. Okay, well, I lost. Now, in the beginning, I was crushed by it at 26 years old.
Oh, yeah.
But then within a few months, you realize, oh, I just lost. Big deal. Yeah. All right, what's next? Let's go. And you realize no one really cares. They're not looking at your life, judging you.
They're not.
You're judging yourself and beating yourself up. So if no one cares, I'm not going to care. So every mistake that I've made along the way, and I failed, having the cookie fail, going to law school for 1.5 years and quitting after 1.5 years.
Yeah.
Right? I've had a lot of failures. When I was rejected by 30 publishers initially as a writer, it didn't define me because I'm like, no, I've succeeded in the past. I've overcome things in the past. I'm now going to find a way to get this published, and let's see what happens. I didn't allow the opinion of others to define me. Yeah. That's the other thing. Do not allow the opinion of others to define you.
That's so good. I have a saying, people don't mind you succeeding, just not too much. and so when you put your confidence or your identity in someone, I went also to the governor of our state in Louisiana, asked me to run for Senate. And I had just come off of being Business Person of the Year, youngest person to get that award. All this, had sold a business, had a liquidity moment. I mean, everything I'm touching, John, is like turning to gold. And so I'm like, okay, how hard can this be running for office? So $600,000 later, 27,000 door to door, walking door to door.
Okay, I thought I did a lot of 7,000. 27, unbelievable.
I applied every single principle that it took to win.
Yep.
My wife said this: success, honey, will lie to you and make you think you can be great at everything. I was like, Selah. That was a moment.
Yep.
Because just because God has gifted you in a certain area, He's not obligated to defend you in battles He hadn't initiated.
Ooh, that's good.
And so I'm sitting there going, I'm using all the principles of business, all the principles of life, and yet if God hasn't given me that area of land to go and take, He's not going to be in it. And you can use the principles. You can use those things, but if God hadn't called you to that area, it's going to be an uphill battle, and you're never going to actually... and that's what happened with me. And when the race was over, lost in the runoff. If I would have won, I would not be in this room right now. I would be fist fighting on the Senate floor over issues, right? And I think of God's hand and His providence. And then I think of Dr. John Maxwell's quote: sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And I think it's a powerful statement. So to our listeners it's like, look, you may have had a setback. You've had failures. You may have had these, use those as fuel to, God's got His hand on your life. He's got a purpose for your life. He's got people in your life that He wants to, not only for you to learn from, but also pour into and give your life away. And so many times, though, we allow a setback to stop us. But if we don't quit, we win. And I never forget this. When starting over, sitting there just building in a rent house, starting completely over. And, but the wisdom that I gleaned from that, because I didn't settle, I wasn't going to quit. I knew God had more for my life. And there was a scripture, somebody who prays for me, who's a medical doctor, but he's an intercessor. He prays for me every day.
That's awesome.
And he said this, Lee, Isaiah 61:7. Instead of shame and disgrace, my people shall inherit a double portion blessing for what they forfeited. That scripture's referencing, the prophet Isaiah is referencing, the Israel people blew it. Like the nation of it, they blew it. But God just says, you know what? Instead of, because He saw the shame and disgrace that other nations were putting on them. And I want to encourage whoever's listening today that, get free from any shame. get free from any of those past, because God's saying, instead of shame and disgrace, I want to bless you double for what you forfeited. And I've seen that in my own life. So when someone would ever bring up maybe a past shortcoming in my life, I say, man, no. Lord, I call the double portion blessing in my life. And that was something, the word of God that God gave me, that I would just remind myself of who I am, that I have the mind of Christ and I hold the thoughts and feelings and purposes of his heart, that I'm a believer and not a doubter, that I hold fast to the confession of faith and I walk by faith. My faith comes by hearing and hearing by the word of God. Jesus is the author and developer of my faith.
Amen.
That was a declaration of scriptures. There's about 30 scriptures that God gave me as one declaration when I was in a fetal position on my bathroom floor after I lost that first business. All I had was the word of God. All I had was the one truth, which is Jesus.
Yep. You were speaking the truth to those lies.
Yeah, exactly. And
Jesus,
you talk about that in the book.
And the one truth, people need to understand, I share high state of mind, low state of mind in this book, share how oneness and separateness explains everything. Are we one with God? Are we separate from God? But ultimately the solution to the separation is Jesus.
That's right.
And in the mind of Christ, when you are one with the Father and one with the Father and Jesus, as you are saved, what happens is his mind becomes your mind.
Yeah.
His love becomes your love. His nature becomes your nature.
So good.
His wisdom becomes your wisdom.
Yeah.
Erwin and I laugh about this. Erwin says, you were not this smart 17 years ago. I know. I was not. He's watched me grow in wisdom. Where's it coming from? Walks every day and praying.
Yeah.
Not
so
me.
Good.
I'm not that smart.
Yeah.
I'm really not. So it's about God literally speaking through us and being obedient to that. I really think a big part of it is just being obedient.
Yeah, so good.
And following his call, following his lead. And you'll be blessed in your obedience.
Yeah.
Charlotte talked about the wait in the cave.
Yeah.
I kept thinking the wait in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Because for me, it was the wilderness. Every great leader goes through the wilderness. And for me, going through that wilderness makes you humble.
Yeah.
When I wrote The Energy Bus, again, finally it gets published. I got to go on a tour around the country because no one will carry the book in bookstores. And Lee, I'm going from city to city. We got 5 people in one city. We got 10.
Wow.
We got 20.
Yeah.
The most people we had were 100 people in Des Moines, Iowa. It was one of the most special times of my life. By the way, they thought Jeff Gordon was coming. That's why they showed up in Iowa.
I love it.
I come back and I'm like, that is where my faith was born in so many ways. It was where I was molded and shaped. I learned to be humble, to have gratitude. Charlotte talked about the conscience that you develop in the cave. It really taught me to appreciate everything I have now.
Yeah.
And it taught me, John, is this really about the mission? Or is it about the numbers?
Yeah.
Is it about making a difference? You said your mission is to inspire and encourage as many people as possible, one person at a time.
Yeah.
So guess what? You have 5 people. You really do have one person at a time. What are you going to do with that? Years later, there were 6 people at one event. Years later, one of those people became the president of Avon and had me speak to 6,000 people.
Wow.
As a result of that.
Yeah, don't miss that principle. Listeners, gosh.
The obedience and being obedient to God. And then during COVID, God gave me a great word in terms of just rely on him.
Yeah.
I was going to take money with PPP money and all that. And I'm not against anyone who did.
Yeah.
But God's told me, no. We applied that night. He said, no, rely on me. Literally, it was a download. I don't hear the voice audibly, but it was rely on me. I told Catherine, we cannot take money. We didn't. It was the best year I've ever had as a writer and speaker doing online Zooms, sometimes 5 or 7 a week.
Wow.
Sometimes actually 8 or 9. And I was just doing these online talks. Got a huge book deal with my publisher, doing a 3-book deal. All these things happened. God showed me the faithfulness of rely on me. Of course, I tithe, a lot of it back to Mosaic, wrote a big old check to Mosaic and several other ministries that we support. But I was like, all right, God, I see. I see every time. And that was a lot of fear during that time. See, it's easy to look back and go, oh, we just stayed faithful. But it's during those moments of darkness and fear and anxiety where you're like, what am I really going to do in this moment?
Yeah.
And when you make that decision, God blesses it.
See, people see Jon Gordon 28 books later, but they don't know the journey that John and Catherine went to when you're showing up and you're grinding and there's 5 people in the room. Man. That'll just set you off into depression. You're like, man, what am I? But you were faithful. You were faithful in the pursuit and you trust God with the outcome.
Totally. I think it's sometimes easier when you're climbing up that ladder because you don't know any better. So you're just doing whatever it takes. So you don't even know what success really feels like.
Yeah.
So you're just going for it. Sometimes, though, people need to understand when you have success, there's actually more fear because you're afraid to lose what you have.
Yeah.
You're afraid to stumble. So I always say you got to have that rookie mindset.
Yeah.
Like I tell myself that all the time. Rookie mindset, you're just getting started.
Yeah.
You're just beginning. Don't get too complacent. Don't think you're anybody because you're nobody. Once you think you've arrived at the door of greatness, it gets slammed in your face.
Yeah.
Right? So bring that rookie mindset.
That's so good. Wow. My first boss I did not like. If there was anybody he was at the top of the food chain on it was all about money, and he was so driven, and he didn't care who he had to run over to get it. And so that was kind of how he trained you. But he did say one thing to me that I'll always take away as just a pearl. And he said, because I was new in sales and I was closing a lot of business, but I really didn't know much. I mean, I just was like, I was green. And he said this, he says, always remember this, when you're green, you're growing. When you're ripe, you're dead.
Ooh, that's good.
And I want to stay teachable. I'll be 60 this year. Man, I'm learning more now than I ever have. And so I want to stay teachable. I want to stay, that student, and then learning. And you use it as that rookie. It's the rookie mindset, I guess.
Rookie mindset.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because rookies don't know about the good old days. Rookies put their head down, work hard, believe that anything is possible, and so they go after it. Lee, do you think sales is a really great starter position for any aspiring entrepreneur and someone who wants to run their own business one day?
Yeah, I think number one is going back to restaurants. Probably one of my greatest to help me with sales was waiting tables.
Yep.
I waited tables in restaurants, and then actually was a wine captain in a restaurant. So that, and then I became a really good salesman to guys bringing in their dates. And so, of course, I'd sell them the most expensive bottle of wine. But it was, and they would never turn me down, of course, because I was selling. But it taught me so much. So I think waiting tables, I think any type of sales position, it helps you really relate to people, connect with people, figure people out. You size someone up and you're thinking they're going to do one thing and they totally go off in a whole different area. When I was waiting tables, if I got somebody in the food and beverage industry, I waited, no matter whether they were wealthy or not was irrelevant. They were going to leave a good tip. Then some people that you'd try to qualify and try to profile that, this is going to be a great tip, it would be crickets.
Yep.
And so, but it taught me rejection. It taught me, that servant mindset. It taught me the intensity of what goes back in that kitchen. And, if you're great in the restaurant business, it's a grind. There's a lot of stress in that. But it taught me a ton. So both in the automotive side, in the restaurant side. So I highly recommend, if you feel you have an entrepreneurial spirit, you need to go. You need to have some level of sales position. Just go experience that for a little bit, and it'll teach you things that are going to help you be very successful.
Yeah, my son, when he graduated Clemson this year, he went to go sell door-to-door security alarms.
Oh my!
Sold like 30 security alarms to complete strangers.
Yeah.
But this was a kid who never had sales experience.
Wow.
That gave him a lot of confidence. Okay, if I could do this, I can go sell anything. I thought. When he wanted to do it, I thought, yes, go for it. Let's go. Like, I don't want to give you a job with me right away. You go do this. Great training ground for developing. I bartended, waited tables. My parents never made more than $30,000 a year combined. So I had to provide for myself. When I graduated college, it was like, okay, you're on your own. Pay your bills. Let's make it happen. I had a hustle. That hustle teaches you grit, teaches you to grind.
Yep.
And then you grow from there. And you look back and you go, wow, like, I'm often amazed that I've written 28 books because I go, man, how did I get here? How did this happen?
So was your English teacher, right?
Yeah, my English teacher, I told her I wanted to go to Cornell, and she goes, why do you want to go there? You won't be able to get in. And even if you get in, it'll be too hard for you, is what she said to me.
Yeah.
I'm a writer now.
She had a gift. Yeah, you're a writer. She had a gift of encouragement.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Well, I just can't thank you enough, honestly, just for the way you've poured into us. And the Domingues love the Gordon family, and we celebrate you, and we're grateful for you. We love how God's using you in the marketplace and in the sports arena, and as well as in the church. And there's many pastors, and there's a lot of kingdom builders and business people and that are listening. And how can they connect with you? And, I can't highly recommend enough the One Truth. And I think it's a great book that if you're a business leader, if you're a pastor, you should be buying for your whole team. Not only just you read it, but for your entire team and even some of your clients as well. But if someone wanted to get in touch with you, or connect with your podcast, or maybe even a church or an organization wanted to bring you in to speak, how can they do that?
Yeah, I love doing that and love hearing from people. They can just go to my website, jongordon.com, Gordon.com. They can fill out a request. I always see the requests when they come in, which is great. Also, Instagram or Twitter, social media. I'm on all the social media channels.
Yeah.
And I do respond to people. When people have challenges or questions, most of the time I'm able to respond. So I do love hearing from people. And I love that you mentioned the One Truth, because a lot of businesses are reading it now. They are sharing it. Yeah. And again, it just came out. So it's cool to see a book start out initially, and then it has to find its audience. But as people start reading it and sharing it, then all of a sudden it starts to spread. And what's cool is the ideas in this book are causing teams and organizations and leaders to look at their situation and just think differently. It makes you think differently. It makes you think at a higher level. Once you read this book, you'll be like a Jedi, is what I say, like a true Jedi. And here's a big part of it. I didn't say it today in my talk. I wanted to say it. I forgot to say it, but it's important. We're not meant to go through life fearful, anxious, worried, stressed, and chronically negative all the time. We're meant to go through life with vision, with power, with purpose, with courage, with confidence, with clarity. And that's how God designed us, to go through life that way. The other way is become normalized, because we see so many people struggling, so many people with their mental health being challenged. So we see it, so it's become normal. No, that's not normal. What's normal is health and wholeness. So I want people to live with that power and that purpose and that greater energy and that higher state of mind. And when you read this book, it's going to help you get there. This is not like any other mindset book that's out there. This is how thoughts work. And once you understand how thoughts work, you can master your thoughts. And you start to be able to master your life with not your own power, but with the power of God. And any book that says you have the power, just eat from the fruit of this tree and you can be like this.
Yeah, that's dangerous.
You can see there's a lot of books out there that's like that. It's false. This says no. You're meant to become one with God, and as you become one with Him spending time in prayer, His power becomes your power, and now you become a powerful force in this world. For what? For your own good? No. For doing what Kingdom Builders is doing, to impact others, impact the kingdom, and impact your people who work for you. This doesn't have to be a biblical thing in terms of your companies if you don't want to talk about it. Just say, how can I go serve my people? Help them grow, invest in them.
Be Jesus to them.
One of the greatest things you could do for them, though, is to help them deal with the negativity and depression that they're facing and the low morale. Uplift them, energize them, encourage them, and make them feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves. And when you do that, they will perform at a higher level. And guess what? You all will. So you'll be happier and you'll be more successful, which I think is really the key. And we're going to be doing some exciting events coming up in terms of a day with event, myself and Ed My Letter doing an event. So that's November 4th at TPC. You'll find that on my social media. And also, we're doing a lot of leadership training now and certification. So people can actually, like John Maxwell has done, people can come and get certified and teach my principles and programs.
That's fascinating. That's awesome.
Again, that's
great resource.
I'm 53 now. And what I realized was it's now the time to develop and pour into others and invest in others. And this is a way to do that, to really build a community that you can pour into, invest in, and then watch them go make a difference. And the cool thing is I've already done it with about 20 people that are on my team, to see their growth of what they've become, to see the impact they're having, doing the workshops, doing the training, doing the speaking. It's really cool. So now the goal is to multiply that to thousands around the world.
I love it.
I want to carry John Maxwell is a guy I really look up to. And I know that he's been doing it for a long time, but I know the next 10, maybe he'll do it for 10 more years, God willing, right? But then we're going to need other people to step in and start doing that. And I want to do that. And John said to me, I'll never forget, I told you earlier, he said, the secret to success is consistency compounds.
Yeah.
I think about that. He's been so consistent every day.
Long time,
every day for years, making a difference. Pouring into people, loving people, investing in leaders, sharing ideas, thinking about content. He's done it the right way. And you look at that and you go, okay, that's a model for me going forward. Consistency compounds. Yeah. And I'm really looking for people who want to join me on this mission to make an impact together.
Well, thank you for investing in all of us. Thank you for making us all better. You and Catherine are just a great example. I love your book, The Relationship Grit. and just fantastic. So anyone who's married out there or thinking about it, highly recommend that as well. But brother, thank you so much.
We love the domains. We love you all, and you all are amazing. And every time we get a chance to talk to your son on the way from the airport or two, I mean, just Harrison is amazing, and
thank you.
All your kids are great, but just
you.
Really special. Like you could just see God's hand on your family, on your life, and the blessings that you're pouring out. And again, it wasn't easy. It looks like they got this perfect family.
No,
but let me tell you something. I know you face challenges
we do.
along the way.
Yeah.
And yet you see the heart they have to serve others.
Yeah.
So we're honored that you actually bring us here, that you actually believe in us, that we have something to say to your, and that you trust in us to share with the people that are near and dear to you and part of this community. So that means the world. And I don't take that lightly at all.
We'll do it again, brother. Thank you so much.
Every
and God
2 years,
bless.
hopefully.
Yes, sounds good. Thank
right.
you again. All right, bye-bye.
To learn more, follow us on social media at kingdombuilders.us. And join us next time for Legacy Starts Today with Lee Domingue.